it's college football media day time, which is great because it signals that we're marching closer and closer to actual games, which I think we can all agree is awesome. We love college football. There's nothing better than waking up on like a crisp fall Saturday where it's not too hot, not too cold. You got like some chili, some wings, food ready to go for the day. There are great games. Like Saturday, October 12th this year is going to be awesome. It's going to be great, and I can't wait for it. And in media days signals kind of like that first leaf falling in the college football ecosystem. SEC media days were last week. Big 12 media days have been in the rearview mirror for a while. Big 10 going on this week. ACC happening this week. Conference USA, American. It's all going on, and it's awesome. But there is a good and a bad of media days. The good being it signals that we are getting that much closer to football, that we can talk about football. We can talk about what happens between those white lines. Who's going to be good? Who's going to surprise? Who is maybe overrated? Who's underrated? And you get coaches' opinions on the sport as a whole. Do you like the 2-minute warning? Do you like quarterbacks having speakers in their helmets? Those aspects of it are awesome. You get to find out, okay, who is looking promising in each conference with preseason media polls, with coaches polls. You find out maybe some things about teams that you might not necessarily have known or recognized because your team might not have played that team, or you find out about players and you find out about their stories. I like that aspect. I like learning. I like finding out what coaches think about college football as a whole. You get to hear from commissioners where they get to field questions from people that if you are not, so for instance, in the Big Ten's offices are in Chicago. If the Big Ten holds a press conference, the likelihood that a Penn State reporter or, and the now expanded Big Ten, a Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA reporter gets to go to the Big Ten office for a press conference and ask questions in person and really kind of badger the people that deserve to be badgered happens once a year, and it happens at media days. The chances of a Texas A&M reporter going to Birmingham if there's a press conference and a big news story from Birmingham isn't likely. But when you have SEC media days, whatever conference it is, you get that opportunity to have people who only get to ask one question or two questions a year. To the people who run the sport, it's a nice opportunity to have. And there's generally news that comes from those press availabilities, from those people asking the questions of the people in charge of our sport. Why'd you do that? What's on the horizon? Why didn't you do this? I like those questions. On the flip side, media days from a coach's perspective, I don't know that you ever really learn a whole lot from them. I think you get a lot of, it's essentially the recruiting, the National Signing Day press conference where, we got our guy. It's the same thing. Every coach is excited about the upcoming season. Really happy with the group of guys that they have collected. Those guys have been working really hard in the offseason. And we've got big expectations for 2024. People might be sleeping on us. People might not think that we're going to finish where we think we think we're better than where we were picked in the poll. It's the same conversation, same song and dance every year. Nobody walks in there and is like, yeah, like Sharon Moore from Michigan doesn't go, we lost a boatload of dudes who played really big, meaningful snaps for us over the course of the last 3 years. And we got a lot of holes, and I don't know how good we are. Our quarterback, hell, I don't know if he's going to be the next coming of Robert Griffin III or if he's going to be just god-awful and we're going to suck. Nobody says that. And I think part of it is there aren't many coaches who, in the middle of July, believe that they don't have the ability to compete or whatever. But at the same time, They're really excited. Uh, the guys that are in the incoming recruiting class, they don't care about NIL. All they care about is wanting to be a member of this program, get a great education at our school, get developed, and have the opportunity to compete for conference and national championships. And it's milk toast. And I can't get on board with that aspect. I like the idea of like, hey, let's all sit down and say, hey, who do we think is going to be the best team in our conference? Let's rank them 1 through now 18 in some instances. And I think it's important for everybody to be on the same page there, or have the opportunity to ask questions of, for instance, outside of the week that Northwestern plays Indiana, those two media entities, those two fan bases don't probably interact all that much. You don't care about that program and vice versa until it's time. But you can get the opportunity to get some really great stories from some players. You get the opportunity because once like fall camp starts, everything turns to football. Everything turns to what happens between those white lines. And if it isn't, it's because something bad happened. It's because somebody got injured, somebody got off the field issues, whatever the case. But you don't generally get the storytelling aspect that makes us love college football. I'll say it before and I'll say it again. Sports is like soap operas split along laundry lines. The reason we like sports isn't just strictly the competition factor, right? Because if it was, you would go to your Division III local college and watch their football games on Saturday afternoons because you just like to see the competition. But you don't do that. And why not? Because you like the story of this team versus that team. You know what this team playing that team means. You know that their quarterback did this. You know who this team's coach is, what he likes to do, and whether or not you like that guy. And you get the opportunity to build whether you like this guy. I'm certain, so I live in Ohio. Quinn Ewers was not necessarily the most famous ex-Buckeye, right? But he goes to SEC Media Days and says, we're going to go play that team up north in Michigan in the second week of the season. And Ohio State fans like, you know what? That guy might not be so bad. It gets the opportunity to decide whether you like the story, whether there is a hero, whether there is a villain. And that's a nice aspect of it. But at the same time, there's so much stuff that's just kind of smarmy, that it is so... It lacks authenticity, is not genuine in the slightest. And that brings it down just a little bit for me. But I do think overall, I appreciate the idea of media days because you want to get out there. You want to talk a little bit of football in the middle of July when there is nothing going on. And so when you can look at, like, we are not that far off from putting on some pads, hearing them pop, and figuring out who's going to hoist the gold trophy at the end of the year, you get you kind of itching for it, doesn't it? Just a little bit, despite it being milquetoast, despite it being kind of boring. It does get those juices flowing just a little bit. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you are watching here on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we're pumping out. If you're listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. See you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily